So hello everyone and welcome to the BSD Dev Room. And my talk today will be FreeBSD specific, but a lot of what I'm going to cover actually does apply to the other BSDs like Open and NetBSD. So my name is Deb Goodkin and I'm the Executive Director of the FreeBSD Foundation. So who am I? So I've been with the foundation since 2015. So I think that's, I think I'm on my 13th year, or on my 14th year now. And my background is engineering. Actually came from more low-level firmware engineering in the storage world. So I worked on disk drives from the actual 14-inch and down to the 2.5-inch, and worked various areas of that for 20 years. And so my background actually is not operating systems, but as someone who's running the organization that is supporting one of the biggest, largest, best operating systems out there, I've put upon myself, actually over the years, I've been trying to learn more about operating systems, specifically FreeBSD. And so this year my goal is to gain more applicable skills, maybe not as a developer. I think I'm sort of done with that, but learning more from the user's perspective, and so we can go around the world teaching FreeBSD and advocating for FreeBSD. So my goals for today in this talk, so I have 25 minutes, and I'm hoping to have some time at the end to answer any questions. And so the goals really is to share some of the history with you and why people and organizations are using FreeBSD and why you should use FreeBSD or contribute to the FreeBSD project. So there's three main components of the FreeBSD world, and so on the top, so that represents the operating system. It's an open source computer operating system, and it's been around for 25 years now. And the second component would be the actual project, and that's comprised of the people, the community, and you have over 400 committers and developers, as well as actual thousands of people around the world who are helping contribute to the FreeBSD project. And then the last here is, this is an old picture actually of some of my board members, and so the foundation is a separate organization. We're a nonprofit. In the U.S., it's referred to as a 501c3, and what it means is we're a nonprofit for the public good. And just since most people here are probably more familiar with Linux, and there's the Linux Foundation, which is very big, they're actually a trade association, and that's why you'll see so many corporate sponsors, because that is their purpose, is to support the corporations out there that are using Linux. So what is FreeBSD? So this is where you'll find, so yes, it is not a Linux distribution, and people do think that, the uninformed people think that it is a Linux distribution. It is one of the largest, most successful open source projects around, because I mean there's thousands of projects. If you look at GitHub, you'll see, I mean it actually could be in the millions. And one difference too between FreeBSD and Linux is just the kernel, and then you have all the distributions that put the userland and tools around it. So FreeBSD is all of that. It includes the tools and the userland, and then we have over 30,000 packages supported, and I think it may be actually at 34,000 now, and then it's created by a community of highly technical people, as well as people who want to improve their technical skills, and it works on very many different platforms, and then also tens of millions of deployments out there. So I know this isn't the best looking timeline out there, but what we try to do, and this is actually, there's 3 slides to show you where FreeBSD descended from. And so in 1969, and I won't go through every box because it could get boring, but really in the end, it actually is really interesting, and you can find a lot of this information online. And we have some of the information on our website too. But 50 years ago, Unix was created. And I believe that there's a keynote at the end tomorrow by John Mad Dog Hall, who's going to give a talk on the 50 years of Unix. So if you can get into that room, because I know I'm going to try to listen to him. His talks are great. And he's going to be talking about the history of Unix. So that'll be really interesting. And but what we try to do is show, some of the main, milestones were like Unix being converted to C code, so it's from assembly, so that means it's not platform dependent. You can run it on different systems. And then for us, being brought to Berkeley, and then that's when it was developed into the Berkeley Unix, and it's also referred to as BSD, which is Berkeley Software Distribution. And down here, the 386 BSD was actually the first the first version that was truly open source and available to anyone without having to have the AT&T license. And then here, there's history of when it did come out. It was a short period that it was out before there was a lawsuit that was brought against it, and it was just by it was owned at that time. It had moved from AT&T to Novell, and so there were some issues that were brought up from Novell, and but then after all those were resolved, done before we go on. Here you can see this is when FreeBSD was officially branched off of it or forked off of it, and then you can see sort of this is where the different BSDs were broken out of here. So we had FreeBSD, NetBSD, OpenBSD, which are really the main three BSDs, and then there's many other flavors too. And so it's just sort of showing you how it descended from. It has this long history originally from Unix, and then here what I try to show were some of the main innovations that came out of FreeBSD and the timeline of that. From we're known for coming up with the jails and down to JMalloc. You'll hear more about ZFS. I believe there's 2 talks going on today, one here and one in the main track about ZFS, and continuing many other features and innovations that I could not squeeze into this chart and be readable. So I don't know how many of you have seen this. It's on the Unix wiki page, and I always find it so interesting to look at it. I mean, it's a total mess, but it shows you how from Unix at the top, how you have all these different flavors of Unix, from HP and Sun's version and IBM, and that's my history. After college, I started with IBM, and so we were developing on mainframes, and so we had the IBM version of Unix. But I highlighted here the BSDs, and so you can go to the Unix wiki page, and yeah, I mean this slide isn't great because I mean it just has so much on there, but I'm always fascinated just following, because you can follow FreeBSD and how it's not linear because of the lawsuit. They actually had to go back and base the later BSDs some of the lines they move around, and it's all because of the lawsuit. So anyway, so I recommend you going to the wiki page and looking at it. And then lastly, the FreeBSD Foundation, we created our own timeline. And this was all because of celebrating the 25th anniversary, and we thought it was just really interesting to go back and see where did we come from. And so this is a timeline that we have on the FreeBSDFoundation.org website. And actually we even start earlier than here, but I wanted to include some of the slides from the timeline that we created. And it has nice pictures and just has little summaries of what happened at each milestone. And so all these I had covered in that original timeline that I had, and how FreeBSD was created. The name was actually created in 1993. It was actually June 19th, 1993, and the reason why I have that date is well, first, my daughter's birthday is June 19th, but secondly, it was just, we actually came up with it's called National FreeBSD Day. National it's a US thing, but we actually call it, since we're an international organization, we call it FreeBSD Day. And we this year will be the third time that we're celebrating that. So it's sort of fun. Jordan Hubbard, who brought in the ports and packages collection. And so here from our timeline, we have some of those innovations broken out. And actually, this has been in the news recently with ARM using this technology, which was developed at the University of Cambridge. So, moving on. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'm trying to make it also maybe a little more interactive or informal, so you don't have to worry about, if you see a mistake, you point it out. Because we are trying to improve that, the timeline. And actually, if you do have events that you think are significant, feel free to email me or someone on the team, because we want to add that to the timeline, because we want to make it notable to everyone. So these are just a few of the FreeBSD users. I couldn't fit, well, we don't know all the users out there, really. I mean, a lot of it is because of the license. So companies don't have to tell us that they're using it. They don't have to give us money to help us with our efforts. But these were some of the more notable, more recognizable logos that I wanted to put here to show that it is used out there. It's very prevalent. And actually, the use is growing. And as someone working for the foundation, we see that every day because people reach out to us. And they may have questions about contributing back or just how to get involved more with the project. So most likely you use FreeBSD. I try to highlight some of the more obvious technologies that you may be using every day, and that is running FreeBSD or is based on FreeBSD. So the two main ones would be the Apple products and then anytime you're streaming a Netflix movie, that's all run on FreeBSD systems. And the reason why is because of the high performance that they can get. So why use FreeBSD? I won't go through every bullet. What I try to do was just highlight why people and organizations do use FreeBSD. And so if you go down the list, I mean, really, the documentation is truly excellent. I've sat down and just read through the handbook. And the FreeBSD handbook is a great way to learn about FreeBSD. It's very well written. But at the bottom here, this is a more recent thing that we've been hearing from students who are saying that FreeBSD is the cool open source project or operating system to use right now. And the reason why is so when Linux came around, then it was, people were anti-Microsoft. It's corporate, and you're sort of stuck with what you get. I mean, you don't have any control of the computer when you run Windows, and now you have this cool operating system that you had a lot more control over. But I mean, Linux is very prevalent, and it's sort of becoming what Windows was in a way. And this is what we're hearing. So I'm not just saying that, from my point of view. So we're trying to take advantage of that by getting into more universities and running workshops. But we're also very small, and the foundation is very small, and so there's only so much we can do. And so what we're trying to do is help get more materials out there available for other people to run workshops and give presentations. But anyway, we thought that was pretty cool hearing that from students out there. And so we actually have some students at various universities who want to do FreeBSD install fests. And then here's a list of why companies are using FreeBSD, and a lot of the reasons are because of the permissive license, and so they can use it's used a lot in embedded systems because of that. But it's also known for the release model and being very reliable. So when a new release comes out, then you are pretty sure that if you install this or upgrade your system, that you're not going to have to back out anything, that it's going to work. And so this is us from, I think this is the last big, it's one of our, I think this is our BSD event in Canada. It looks very small. It's funny how they do the pictures, and they try to be creative every year, trying to get the group in it, but it makes it fun too. And actually the guy in the center, one of the guys in the center, he's normally here, but I don't see he's arrived yet. And so anyway, but anyway, here, that's just sort of the list of, well, this is the list of how the project works, and which is a little different than how Linux is. I compare Linux just because it's FreeBSD is usually compared against Linux. They're both Unix-like operating systems, and so, but how the projects work are a little different. And so ours is more, we're made up of different teams, and so you may have the core team, the release engineering team, you have a documentation team, and various teams that help contribute to the project. And so one key difference is that you have a core team that's actually elected, and they're elected by committers, and committers, they can actually submit code to the source tree, and so you don't have one person. We're at Linux, they actually have different hierarchies of lieutenants, and we don't have that different hierarchy, and it doesn't mean the code is anything less. It's still reviewed by very capable and experienced people, and so you actually have various people within the project who will review code changes, and code changes can be backed out if they're not accepted, and so you don't really have like feeding up to one person who makes the final decision. So it's definitely more democratic. And then I thought this was a cool graph showing the age distribution, because it's we're actually finding it's getting a little younger, so new people are joining, and all we have to do is get rid of some of these people up here, and then it'll really move down. So we've been working on that. So, but try not to be real obvious with that. But and so I'm gonna. This is just some of the different applications that that are out there from different corporations, how they use FreeBSD, and then just some of the places. I mean, it's a long list, but really where FreeBSD stands out and why you would use it, and where it is actually successfully being used. And so the FreeBSD Foundation, that's what I run. And so we were founded in March 2000. We are, like I was saying earlier, we're a public charity, and we're based in Boulder, Colorado. And lastly, we are 100% funded by donations. So why you should get involved, there's many reasons why you should get involved in FreeBSD and open source in general. And I mean, to me, like the biggest thing is really getting these marketable skills. So especially for younger people who want to get skills to be able to get jobs, either if they're in the university or if they're not following that path. And so some of the things that stand out to me, because we're a global distributed project, you can gain communication skills, because you have to communicate with people around the world. You have different cultures and different forms of communicating with people. It's most of the time it's an asynchronous form of communication, so you've got to learn how to deal with that, meaning, I email someone or message them on IRC, but they're asleep because they're on the other side of the world. So you have to learn how to deal with that, and also how to collaborate with people also around the world and from different cultures, and who might be different than you are. And so it's and that's something that you will actually use in most type of jobs that you will get. I mean, most corporations are global. So how can you contribute to FreeBSD? Here's my list of some of the ways that you could contribute. That is me down there giving that was actually our first FreeBSD Install Fest that we gave at the Foundation office, so that was a lot of fun. And so I encourage people to get involved today. And you can find out more by coming up to me. And like I said earlier, we have a FreeBSD table downstairs on the first floor, and a lot of people there who can answer your questions. And here I put together this little cluttered screen, but I was trying to find like resources that you could find, and I mean, I just made it sound like it was really hard to find them. There's actually a lot of resources out there, and so these were the key ones that that I like to sort of highlight. And from this is a great book, learning about FreeBSD and using it from more of a sysadmin type of person, and then we had. And so, I mean, basically, just searching. So Kirk McKusick, who was that me? Mm. I don't think so. Oh, because of that's interesting. Technical. That's really interesting. It went further. Okay, so Kirk McKusick, who's been with the project since the very beginning, and also was one of the key people with BSD from the early 80s. And I think he came on around in the late 70s, early 80s. And so if you search for Kirk McKusick, or you go I go to his website, and he has videos that you can actually purchase, or really if you just search FreeBSD history, you'll find he's given many talks around the world, and his talks are always really interesting because he was part of it. So he'll talk about, like, back in '78, and Bill Joy was sitting in my office, and he was this lowly guy, and so he'll talk about the early days, and it's so much fun to hear. And the other thing about Kirk is that he's still part of the project, and so he goes to most of the BSD conferences around the world. And a lot of times he'll give his talk, or he'll give a FreeBSD tutorial. And he's also on my board of directors, but he's very approachable. And so I'll see him, he'll have dinner, he'll be having dinner with other people who are attending the conference, and I'll get a kick out of listening to him telling stories about the old days. But people can go up to him and ask him questions, and he's available, and he's interested, and he's engaged. And so so that's one thing I really love about this community is not that it's perfect and everyone's so happy and friendly, but I would say that most people in general are friendly and helpful, and interested in helping raise you with everyone else, so that maybe if your code isn't up to the level or the standards, that they will give you constructive feedback to help guide you, and so you do improve your your programming skills, or whatever skills it is that you're contributing to the project. So anyway, so I know I have a minute and 42 seconds left, so it's not a lot, but if you have any questions, I'm open to answering anything. So my purpose was really to sort of highlight FreeBSD, not to go into anything technical. Like I said, my background, as far as operating systems go, isn't my background, but Kirk has a 10-hour tutorial on the kernel, and that is something that I've been watching and just sort of learning myself. So, because I find it interesting. So, no questions? Okay, well, please go to our table, donate €20, and you can get this cool T-shirt. So thank you.